Good morning. Welcome to another snowy Monday here in Wisconsin, where I am. Good Monday morning. It's a little snowy here in Wisconsin at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Actually, it looks like the snow is just about melted again, so just enough to give everyone a little bit of a headache this morning. Not a good morning to have no hot water either, so hopefully that will be taken care of by the time I get home. So, today, continuing from last week, as far as I've got a little bit of a history of screen capture here, but I'm now moving into the realm of moving this into connecting this to virtual tourism. What do you call it? I hate to call it in-game photography because that's just really, it seems so limiting. But well, what are you gonna do? So, go ahead and get started. Nope. It's important to have your headphones on when in the office. Hey there, how's it going? Let me pause the music here. So a mud object oriented was a I don't want to call it a game, but it was like a multiplayer uh, digital space back in hold on, my phone just went blank on me. Rails, interesting. I don't know what Rails is, but I mean, you can check out Muds and Moos online, but um, a Moo allows players to create objects fairly simply in the space. So, like for example, in the Moos that I'm in, oh, Ruby on Rails. Okay. Um, you can also, I mean, another option if you're um, yeah, there are other options. We've created moves using a uh, pretty straightforward setup provided by PenMush, which, let's see if I can. Here's that's for creating a mush. Pretty straightforward install. If I'm gonna have to do it again, I think this week actually for an upcoming workshop. But what's really great about these is that that might help envision what that would look like. I mean, as far as creating objects, what type of things, how would you interact with them? Because for moves, you spend a great deal of time interacting with not just other players, but also the objects and spaces in them. So it makes for an interesting experience. But what I haven't gotten into it too much, but there's a field of study called a new way of thinking about this called so-called new materialism. And what it basically is, if you think about, I mean, for me, it starts from an environmental consciousness, like how we're very concerned with our environment, and so one way of looking at this is our perspective towards you you could probably battle a building, but you would build it as such. Like it would be, and the thing about a moo is that because it's text based, its scale is kind of ambivalent. It could be a 10-story building or a or a thimble, but they're all the same way. You could have. Oh, cool. So that reminds me of Ultima. Have you ever played any of those? See, that's really cool because one of the problems that I mean, one of the shortcomings with a lot of games, and this might be what you're getting at before, is that there is no real interaction between the environment. It's static, right? So uh, there isn't this kind of dynamic. I mean, birds do shit to trees. Birds attack other animals, and so it's interesting. It would be interesting to see just how an environment changes. We had an experiment in with this Minecraft model a few months back during the Global Game Jam where I can't remember the name of the mod, but it infects the environment. And that's the best I've seen where this kind of random spread of this plague kind of took over this Minecraft world. That's really interesting to watch, but it's pretty again, even that is um, pretty dull, and you end up having to stop it, and so but that would be interesting, especially if you can get yeah yeah we just don't have uh, those type of environments. You get like the odd like some of the more sophisticated AAA titles might have weather patterns and night and day, and but that's about it. I mean, I've done a little bit of work in Grand Theft Auto 5. In fact, that's what I'm writing about now. And what you're limited to rain or shine, night or dark, um, and you can get some interesting things there, but it's just not. You don't have the like a plastic bag in a tree or huh. Yeah, I've never heard of hunter prey mechanics. That's really cool though. I'm reading a little something on here right now, but it's a for data science. What always, because I'm not a programmer, what's always interesting to me is how these things get broken down mechanically, especially navigation. I can't remember the name of the process where the shortest distance between two routes, so it works. It's like if you have your can you send me a link to the game that you're talking about? It'd be great to check it out. Good old RPG Maker. Which MIT book? Watching a video where the avatar is interacting with a barrel. Did you say you had a project on itch? Hmm. Yeah, well, I understand that college is not the best place if you're wrestling with uh, those types of issues. Believe me. Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, though, to be honest, a lot of schools, and I would expect the same thing of MIT, they have a lot of resources to help kind of wrestle and with those situations. Yeah, I did as well. It took me a while to get back to school because of that. Yeah, just there. I mean, we are finally getting over this feeling like as though college is something that you have to do immediately after high school. I would be willing to bet that someday, hopefully very soon, we realize that college is not only uh, something that can be put off, but maybe it's not all that great to be doing right out of high school. Should be taking a break. Yeah, I agree. School is um, the one of the bigger hurdles is to figure out that balance of um, and salt and fire. I see something about a movie. Hmm. Still not seeing anything. Yeah, maybe. Not Salton Sanctuary, is it? That's older. Oh, Salton Sanctuary? That's a couple years old. Yeah, it's like a um yeah, I mean I just got it little while ago. I didn't realize it had yeah, what do they call it? Like a Dark Souls platformer. Hmm. Love Never Alone. Very cool. Yeah, especially if you're not doing 3D and you're only a single person or even a small team of people rather than uh, you know is it Ubisoft who does the Assassin's Creed series with if you don't have an army of people working beside you, it could be difficult. See now, what's interesting is I come from a more I come as from advertising and graphic design, so for me that was always easier is for a um, for games that came more natural to me. Photoshop and pixel art that is much easier for me. But I'm always envious of the other side of the house where y'all are doing the mechanics and everything. Um, I would love to see a actual development team in action and just see how they communicate between each other because I'm in the English department, so another part of this is the writing for games always comes last. The game gets put together and then the story is this is probably a triple A model, so I'm always interested in finding out like where does the writing happen. As the tech school in town has a very very good game design program and 3 tracks: design, art, and programming. I can't remember the 3 tracks, but writing is not in there. So oh, nice. Well, I don't know how long it's been since you've been when you were at university the first time, but games are becoming a lot more acceptable. Oh, nice. That's really cool. How did you make that in Photoshop or was that in I'm not I have RPG Maker but I've never used it. Oh, okay. Yeah, I could never bring myself to use GIMP. Oh, I'm sorry, Game Maker. I apologize. Yeah, I have Game Maker Studio. Took advantage of one of those humble bundles. Yeah, I appreciate GIMP. I wouldn't say I'm the best advocate for open source software, uh, but yeah, and I admit from years of working in graphic design, I am a slave to Adobe. It's much easier for me to jump in. It takes longer for Photoshop to launch than it usually takes for me to have to work in it. Nice. Oh man, that's a great feeling. Well, they do have student discounts on Adobe software. I don't think I would be able to do a whole lot without that. So that's one penny for being in school. Yeah, the Creative Cloud has made it much more difficult to obtain slightly used copies. Hmm. Oh, well, that's good to know. Oh, well, I have a feeling that Adobe will clamp down on that faster than they remedy any of their tech issues you run into. That's interesting. That's what I've heard about GIMP. Is if you, once you get a handle on it, um, it's not only better than Photoshop in a lot of ways, especially if you are um, interested in the histograms and curves and getting into like the visual data. It's amazing, and that's so. Yeah, I'm disappointed in myself for not ever getting into GIMP for that reason. Well, Adobe's gonna have can afford to do a lot of things better. Oh yeah, if GIMP doesn't do transparent layers, I'm not sure what I would do then. I couldn't work. Hmm. That's funny that you mentioned Witcher 3. I've had it for one of those games that kind of fell to the wayside. It started up the first time, I want to say, in January. I love that engine. I've never seen an environment more um, compelling. just the way that, especially the grass kind of blows in the wind. Yeah, spent one of my little side projects is doing in-game photography and screen captures, and I spent Witcher 3 has that bonus of having those extra features in there, but man, just some incredible work. I wonder if I have. Yeah, Humble Bundle has done some amazing work with their books. I think. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't find it. Sorry. Is that? Do you mean two distinct things, like the impact of the backstory on the environment, or? Well, have you? have you ever played Fate Core? So so I don't know about you, but spent my background is also in D&D. So that was kind of my main tabletop experience. Um, I just had a friend who just started teaching a group of us how to play Fate using. Let me. It's a wonderful system. Let me. In fact, you can download. Evil Hat Games allows you to check out the engine for free. But Fate, what Fate does is, you know how like when you play your typical RPG, you've got a race, you've got a class, maybe a gender, you've got some, these categories that don't really help you flesh out a backstory. You still have to you kind of come up with that on yourself. For me, the backstory has always been important. That's the most fun. I mean, I'm one of those people that really enjoys making a character, and it is one of those things that in digital games it's really disappointing how limited that is. There's the backstory is kind of given to you. It's usually pretty bad. Not a whole lot of soul, really, for lack of a better word. So Fate, what Fate does is your character is developed through not just your backstory, but how that backstory interacts with the other players at the table. I'm gonna try to, again, I'm new to this, so this might be different. So I would take like an adventure that I had. This would be a round, and this is in the character creation. And you take an adventure that you had, and you pass it to someone else, and that person writes down a complication. So, for example, I had another player wrote down that they lost several fingers in an accident while taking photography in Vietnam. This is their story, and I wrote, well, because of my mechanical background, I created cybernetic fingers or whatever, and this becomes part of his story. So that giving it back to him, he said, well, I refused those because of, and he would create this a character attribute through this backstory. So the backstory, the character itself is all built through that backstory that's created collaboratively. It is the coolest thing I have ever seen, and I really love playing it, and it's very cool to see how that character builds in the scenario, where it's like, D&D, you go through, you come up with these goofy combinations if you want to make things complicated or make a more enriching story. My favorite character was a half orc bard, and he was just a terrible musician, and that was the most fun. So you create these goofy combinations that aren't like the default, right? This one, when you're playing an RPG through that. Now imagine in your case, like for your game, imagine if you created a character through interaction with different objects, because that's something that, we haven't, I mean, in Fate we haven't really done it, at least I've never had that experience, but imagine how, like in the bit that I saw, the video of yours that I saw, this is this is kind of goofy, but what if you, um, what if you have an aversion towards certain objects in a game? So maybe I had a bad experience getting pushed. Yeah, that see now imagine if you had a room of objects to make your character and you selected certain objects. Again, I mean this is also starting to sound like Ultima. I remember where if Ultima 4 you met the gypsy and you flipped over your cards to determine your morals and your virtues, right? Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. Um, I was thinking about the video that you had where there was a guy checking out the barrel. Now imagine if the poor guy had been thrown over Niagara Falls in a barrel as a child, and how that would affect it. That would have an aversion. So anything barrel related could be a problem for the poor guy. Well, sorry to add to your pile, but that's so. What I do is I teach English, and one of the ways I do it is through that type of observation, like looking at the objects. For example, um, how do these objects appear to us, and how do they change our livelihoods? Because they do. We don't really think about it as often as we should. But in addition to the people, of course. I wish I've never DM'd in my life somehow. To be honest, I'm just too. I would. I think I would be a nervous wreck, always worrying if people were having a good time or not. So I guess I'm a little bit of a coward when it comes to DMing. To be honest. Wow. Yeah, I know someone, a friend of mine who uh, has never played a game of D&D in his life. He has only run campaigns. uh, And so that's not to bore you, but the previous chapter of my dissertation that I wrote was all about how games allow people to create and share worlds. And oh, what kind of stuff did you write? Or do you write? Nice. Well, then I ask you, because I'm not a creative writer, but I have to know, why is good fantasy so hard to come by, or am I just not looking in the right places? Oh, cool. Huh? Interesting. How does that work? I've never heard of a webazine before. Yeah, please do. It'd be interesting to see. Have you used Twine before? Oops, shoot. Trying to find a good example of a twine work. Where did you get these sounds? Huh. Oh. You know what's really cool about that is that you've got the genre of a fairy tale down to a T. You've nailed that. Like just the cadence and how you've recited that. That's pretty awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's pretty cool. Um it's hard to describe. Like I almost want to play this for a friend of mine who studies children's books, and uh, it's a really interesting experience listening to you read that because it sounds like something from uh, from childhood, like listening to just how a fairy tale is read. The language is simple and accessible. There's a little bit of darkness in there that I really like. Um, so is this a series, or is this like one episode? Huh. Let's see. Oh, so this is brand new too. Okay. That's really slick. Love it. So how long would you say it takes? I mean, looking at that one, you have about half a dozen visual assets, images. You have a dozen or so sounds, and uh, how long do you think it would take to make something like that? Or how long did it take you to make that video? Wow. Oh, sure. That's really cool. I'm gonna, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Uh, yeah, I'm interested because I'm still trying to sort this out, but like one of the frustrations is that we tend to, um, and I studied literature for a while, but especially for games, I'm much more intrigued by our ability to make our own stories, and something like this. That's why I asked about whether it's a serial thing. If like next week, join us for the conclusion of this, or if this is something that like if you're creating a world, just having this kind of gallery of characters and situations, and then you kind of create the world through that. It's very, very realistic. Hmm. Hmm. I'm thankful you shared that. I don't know if that is difficult to share your creative work on something like Twitch, but that's that's good stuff. Oh, wonderful. That's oh, fantastic. I have a bunch of meetings today, but oh, wonderful. That's great. I look forward to seeing that for sure. One of the reasons that I'm streaming this god awful mess is just kind of experimenting with it as a uh, kind of exposing the writing process, as awful as it is. So, for Twitch, I'm still learning this myself. There's one thing about Twitch is if you have YouTube as well, you can export it to YouTube, and but Twitch, it I think it retains the rights to the work that you do on it. I'm not really clear on it. But you might want to look into that, especially if you're publishing your work. I don't know, but I'm suspicious of Twitch in general. What I am trying to get better about doing is, especially for when I'm just writing and doing my own stuff, I will upload it to YouTube and put a Creative Commons license on it. Makes it a little bit more difficult because sometimes what I'll do is do let's plays, or I'll look at some games or something for research, and I can't make that Creative Commons. But I also don't want it on Twitch because it reserves the rights to those that work. Also, Twitch does not maintain videos. They keep them for maybe 3 months. And that might change if you get one of their affiliate or partner statuses, but otherwise your videos disappear. So make sure you're downloading them. And there's also, if you go to, let me pull this over so you can see. I'm about to go meta here. So if you go on over to videos, see, and this is what I want on Twitch, is Twitch will not let you watch other people's Twitch feeds, which is interesting. So you can see, like, here's one that's expiring in 4 days. So that was 2 months. 2 months it holds on to it. So what you do is, over on the side here, it gives you this you can download it. There should be an export as well. There was a way to export this, I thought. Huh, see, so you can see it here. Maybe I just can't. Maybe my toolbar is. Oh, for crying out loud. It should be right there. So you can export it to YouTube. Well, yeah, that's a really good question. I don't. There's got to be a way. I mean, it all depends on how you retain ownership. I also don't know too much about copyright because I am coming out of a public university. I feel like that's, and plus I want my work to be accessible to anyone who, for whatever reason, wants to look at it. It should have access and not be restricted by um, twine. So it depends if you're worried about the copyright. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to protect it. My concern would be that Twitch would retain ownership of it somehow, um, and it's so murky. Like I've talked to lawyers from museums. I've talked to a lawyer here on campus, and this is all new territory for a lot of these issues. I certainly would, especially if you were to say use your work on, I think you mentioned you were selling your work on Amazon. Maybe this is a little bit of a extreme scenario, but what happens if they say, well, you don't own that. You wrote it on Twine or you wrote it on Twitch, and you use this. I don't know. That's it would be worth looking at. I certainly wouldn't want you to lose rights to your work because of so let's see. So verses. So I'll show you, for example. I have so for these you can see on some of these, like, so these are Creative Commons. Anyone can use them, anyone can remix them. I'm not sure if they have to attribute, but I usually will put something in there that says please attribute. This one is not right. I don't think I can claim Creative Commons on this one because it's got some copyrighted material. Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, I've had, you can see on this here, I either had audio on in the background, or in other videos where I had Grand Theft Auto 4 being played, the radio station would set off the alert for copyright. YouTube will do the same thing. So there's a video somewhere on here where I was just goofing around with video editing on the phone and played a video over just a random song that I had available, and they sent a notice. Yeah, and then I'm certainly, I'm all about giving credit where it's due, and even if it's that involvement is minimal. I'm trying to think. So sorry, but you reminded me that I had to change that back. So I imported these just a couple days ago. Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing. I mean, I yeah, and you would want to make sure you claim ownership on that stuff, or else someone can use it. Here's and so this is one of the reasons that it's been interesting, is because a lot of some of the things that I do are this kind of tourism, for lack of a better word, of these type of game spaces, and take pictures once in a while. And so I don't have ownership of those images. That's all. That's all owned by, Rockstar or the publisher. But you can see me just kind of looking around, and of course, unfortunately, the screen is only capturing like a corner. But anyway, so it's murky, and unfortunately, the entertainment biz has a lot of clout and a lot of lawyers. But yeah, I don't know how individuals can preserve their, like, what the process is, how that's changed, to maintain ownership and make sure no one uses it, because it's a lucrative business for people to kind of take things that aren't protected and claim them as their own. That's fascinating. So they're no longer offered on Amazon anymore? Well, that's an interesting thing, especially if you're thinking about doing it regularly. Then it becomes like, does it, if you have subscribers on Twitch, however, that could be a way of doing, I think you could do that on YouTube as well. But yeah, you definitely wouldn't want your stuff removed. Oh, that's fantastic. That's got to be a pretty damn good feeling. So for that $300, does that come from the advertising that is placed? That's cool. Well, I think people have a real an honest hunger for original stuff. Um, I mean, television, movies are the dominant forms of how we are entertained. It's all they're all reboots. I mean, just blatant reboots, and this is after decades of unoriginal, uninspiring content. So I'm still trying to find a good example for twine that I could something that I mean I'm gonna so you've got a copyright on Cupid's Rising. I mean that's uh yeah, I'm looking at it, and it says that you've got a copyright on there. I'm just wondering if did you ex- explicitly request that the copyright is put on there, or did wondering if Amazon put it on there for you on your behalf? Ah, okay. Well, oh, do they print it for you too? So I'm laughing because it says weight, and like this is a ebook, 1.9 pounds, 588 pages. Good God, wow, that's impressive. Ah, gotcha. That's amazing. Almost 600 pages. Well, as someone who struggles to even write one or two, yeah, your style is, like I said, spot on. When you're reading that, it comes through. You can really hear, the genre. Um, and what I like about this, I mean, just reading the preview that Amazon gives you, it reminds me of, is it the Silmarillion, Tolkien? Just that kind of, um, not, I don't want to say biblical, but there's that, because it also, what am I thinking of? Those like Norse mythos and just that type of, I'm not sure what you would describe that as, but that this is so and so, they are the son, I don't know, draw, it's like describing lineage. um, because you see this type of writing in Native American. I mean, this reminds me of, for obvious reasons, this reminds me of Black Elk Speaks. Well, I have put my 2 hours in. Haven't written too much today, but this has really been great. I'm thrilled that you shared this with me. Uh, I usually put in, I don't know if you've seen, I stream fairly regularly. Why? Don't be sorry. Um, no, this is, if you're apologizing for uh, conversation, don't be. That's why I do this. I don't. Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah, I don't. I write. I try to stream when I don't have anything going on every day. I'll usually do a little bit of research slash playing on Wednesdays. But no, I don't. I live stream to also interact and uh, have exchanges like this, which is fantastic. This is wonderful. Writing is such a weird thing, and we have this misconception that it's done in isolation, and it's so much more enriching when you have other people doing the same thing, even if they're not writing the same type of thing. I don't know. So I appreciate you stopping in and sharing your work. It's wonderful. So I will be looking forward to seeing your videos soon. Make sure that I'm following that. All right, and I will make sure that to check it out. And I'm gonna keep an eye out for that copyright stuff, you might, I mean, if you've dealt with Amazon, you might have maybe we can compare notes, because I'm very concerned about how streaming impacts this. Yeah, eating is important. So anyway, thanks again. I will be back. If I don't see you on your channel, I will be back tomorrow at around 10 o'clock. So thanks again. Appreciate it.